Welcome to the Bite-Sized Storytelling Show, brought to you by Commaful.com, where we bring you techniques, advice, and stories that will help you on your writing journey. Without further ado, please give a warm welcome to our special guest.
Hi Commaful, Jen Haskin here. I am a published author and editor at a publishing house, and for a few years I was also an agent. On my blog I talk about writing, editing, publishing, and marketing advice, and it's been a while since we've talked about writing, so I wanted to talk today about world building. The first thing I tell authors is tell us everything you see and nothing that you don't. We all know through a point of view that if you're telling Harry's story, you can't know how Sally is feeling, and vice versa. Well, a similar principle works with world building. Your world exists through the eyes of your character, and depending on what age group they are and the genre that you're writing with, the different characters are going to notice different things in their world and their environment. Kids notice different things than adults do. And that might seem a little bit all over the board, but just stick with me for a minute and I'll tie it together. The world your characters are in lies within the details of your story. What might be a detail to Sid may not be a detail to Sid's friend, but might be a very big detail to Detective Mackenzie. Tell us what each character notices about their world, and then link those things to the character's emotions. Because as humans, we are very emotionally connected to our world and things around us. If Susie sees a sunset on the beach, it's wonderful to tell us how vibrant the colors were, how the clouds are like flames that appear to lick the night sky and all that. But it does nothing for the story if you don't tell us how that sight makes Susie feel. Does it bring her new hope? Maybe an answer to an unasked question. Maybe it reminds her of her late father and breaks her heart. But whatever you do, tie our emotions to that beautiful word picture that you're making. If Susie then steps into her shadowy interior of her late 70s Mazda with cracked leather seats, give us every detail that she sees and feels. Maybe the seat is still warm from the sun. Maybe that correlates to a warm feeling she's having inside. But tell us everything she notices that has importance to her. Maybe she doesn't notice anything, but she bounces to her favorite song on the way home, and that gives her a renewed sense of optimism, and she sings, "Everything's gonna be all right." And I know you're thinking, well, that's a song, that's not world building. But that's where you're wrong. Every sensory detail in your story builds the world around your characters, and everything they come into contact with should have a reason for being in the story. Don't add details for shock value and then not follow up with the shock. That makes readers angry and disappointed. If you want to write better chapter hooks, I have a formula for that in a whole nother video. But don't use the appearance of a gun on the table to make the reader think there's danger, only to find out later it was your attempt at making the world edgier. In fact, there's a theory called the theory of Chekhov's gun that loosely states if there's a gun on the mantle in Act 1, it had better go off by the end of Act 3. And this is what I'm saying. Maybe that gun appears to have no point now, but if it comes back later that it was an important detail, your readers will remember. And trust your readers to pick up on all your hints. Don't be heavy-handed with your hinting, because readers will remember. Many writers have a tendency to turn world building into something called an info dump. I find this happens most when a character enters a home and gives us every detail of the floor plan upon entering, or walking into a room, gives us every detail of the room before anyone even speaks or acts. Here's an example, an incorrect example. Bill opened the door. The room was dark, and light from a single candle danced on the walls. Bill could see a table near him with a sharp letter opener and a stack of mail. Across the room of waxed walnut flooring sat a matching side table where the candle illuminated the face of his arch rival, Danvers. "I've been waiting for you," Danvers said, raising a gun. Okay, that's wrong. And then I know you're asking now, well, then how do we do it? The simple answer is, tell us what they see as they see it. Bill did not walk in the room and have time to think about all those things that he saw and notice all of those things while Danvers waited patiently for him to notice everything before speaking. So intersperse your world building details within the scene. When someone walks into a room, they see one or two things. One being the feel of the room. And this can be a physical or emotional climate, but it should affect your character. I would change that previous paragraph to something more like this. Bill opened the door. The room was dark and cold, and he shivered. The light from a single candle danced on the walls and illuminated the face of his arch-enemy Danvers. "I've been waiting for you," Danvers said, raising a gun. Bill's gaze darted to a table near him, where he could make out a stack of mail next to a wicked-looking letter opener. Would he have time to make it? Bill slid along the walnut flooring as though it were freshly waxed, his hand reaching for the handle as a shot rang through the air. And see, you get a hint of a rising action there. It's a tease, but it's more active, and you're more involved in the environment than if someone gave you a laundry list of descriptions and then went on with the action of the story. Mix them up. And that's all world building. And when added through the scene in bits that affect the character, it's really hard to go wrong. In the second example of Bill's situation, I didn't mention the second side table at all because it wasn't important. It wasn't important to either of the men or the story or the room for that matter. But in giving a laundry list of descriptions of the room, I needed to give the candle a place to sit, so I described a table that really wasn't necessary. Use rich words, descriptive words, and in a detailed narrative. Make word pictures. Authors sometimes forget that the reader can't see what's in your head. If there are shadows lurking around the edges of the room, you need to tell us. Maybe when the character notices it, that can go along with his apprehensive feeling that this private meeting might be something sketchy. Think about how you want the environment to feel, and then add details that support that kind of atmosphere that you're going for. In using descriptive words, don't slip into using a bunch of adverbs or words that end in ly, like the sun shone brightly, the dog barked loudly, the kids laughed happily, the room was decorated prettily, which is kind of a weird one, but hopefully you're getting the point. But use adjectives all you like, along with metaphors and synonyms. And I know you're probably thinking, didn't you mean metaphors and similes? That's not what I meant. Adjectives are the descriptive words that come before a noun, not just a penny, but a clean penny, or a shiny penny, a new penny, a worn penny, a moldy penny. Those are all descriptive adjectives for penny. One thing that's not an adjective is very. Cut out all the veries. One lady said, put the word damn in place of all the veries, and then the editor will cut them out and everything will be fine. So the reason for that is very is a weak word. She's not very happy, she's ecstatic. And this is where your synonyms come into play. Look up an online thesaurus when you're writing and just kind of have it on another tab. And when someone seems very pretty or very tired, very angry, or very whatever, find a stronger word. Look up synonyms for the word you're tempted to use to see if there isn't a better fitting word for what you want to say. Metaphors are using one thing to describe another. Ever hear, she's madder than a hornet's nest? That's a metaphor. Remember earlier when I talked about the clouds in the sunset being like tongues of flame? Tongues of flame. That's also a metaphor. If you're writing sci-fi and or fantasy and there is a new or unfamiliar object, describing it with metaphors is sometimes easiest. For example, it was like a green slime that projected from the hole, kind of like the trickle from a water faucet. It strung down in spaghetti-like strands on the ground and hardened into something we could use for rope. Did you spot all the metaphors in those two sentences? You can combine adjectives, metaphors, and whatever you like, as long as it makes sense and creates a picture in the minds of your readers. Help them to see what you see. Lastly, you must follow the laws of physics. Even in alien worlds, unless you can explain the way it looks so well that it has doubtless clarity about what you're describing. For example, lights shine in beams or streams, but light cannot jump or crawl or bounce. A glow cannot drip or fall. In order for those things to happen, they would need mass. So you must make things work in a familiar way, unless you're making a point of creating it so differently for a reason. If there is no other reason than you're being unique, really consider if it's worth possibly confusing and losing readers. So, in conclusion, look at your world through the eyes of your character. Tell us everything they see, hear, smell, touch, and taste, and nothing that they don't. Use everything you put in the scene to develop the story and give it to us as they experience the world. And you can't go wrong. Thank you.
If you found this interesting, be sure to like, subscribe, and give a special thanks to our volunteer instructor. Reviews and likes really go a long way and help us provide more awesome writing resources to the Commaful community. If you aren't on Commaful yet, you can join a community of poets, short story authors, and fan fiction writers on Commaful.com.